Hey, it's Mike. Let's talk about Reaper. I know I've been a ghost as of late and haven't done a proper video since maybe Thanksgiving, and I'm recording this the day before Christmas, hopefully to have it ready for you by Christmas Day. And in case I don't see you until after then, Merry Christmas to you. I've got some great plans for things to go on the channel starting next year, the first of which is an Ask Me Anything type of video. Let me know in the comments below if you prefer that to be a live stream or a prepared video where I answer your questions. I've already made a post on the community tab where you can ask your questions for me to answer. And as the name would suggest, it's literally Ask Me Anything. It can be about Reaper, it can be about my personal life, it can be about coffee. Whatever you'd like to ask me anything. I'll leave a link in the description for that post so you can find it and ask your questions. Not too terribly long ago, I posted a video showing a new song I'm working on called Blue Drift. This is the first song that I'm writing for my new musical project called Midlife Riot. I'm no longer playing drums for my former band, and we've all split up on good terms. It's just that we each had different things that we wanted to do musically. Instead of playing drums in this project, I'm playing guitar and also singing. And in this video, I'd like to take a moment to break down the mix of the work in progress, particularly showcasing Audio Assault's new plugin, Amp Locker. If you're not familiar with Amp Locker, Audio Assault is following suit with many of the major amp sim manufacturers in creating a single plugin to house all of their new plugins going forward, at least with regard to amp sims. The Amp Locker plugin is free, at least for one amp, which is called the Prestige 1959. It's a bit of a customized version of a Marshall Plexi, I believe, but it's got a great tone if you're looking for that mid-gain crunch with breakup, and I find that it suits my playing style and preference quite well. Before we get too deep into this mix breakdown, if you haven't subscribed, be sure to click that subscribe button below. Your likes, shares, subscriptions, super thanks, all that stuff helps to support the channel and encourages me to make more. If you've got anything that you'd like to see featured on the channel in the coming year, be sure to leave a comment below. Let's get started. So as I said in the introduction, the project that I've got open is my work in progress of a new song I'm writing called Blue Drift. Click the link above if you'd like to see my guitar playthrough, and if I'm honest, it's just me going through the song quickly in my pajamas from a couple of weeks ago, but it's worth watching. Let's take a listen to work in progress. All I've got in this project so far is the introduction, which will become the chorus, and also the first and second verse. And it sounds a little something, well, it sounds exactly like this. And that's all I've got documented so far. I do have the song completely mapped out musically, at least in my head, and my bandmates and I have played through it, I just haven't recorded it yet. In a lot of cases when I'm writing a new song, I like to record a piece of it, and that way I can loop it, and that helps me to decide what lyrics I'd like to put with it, helps me to determine vocal melodies and other ideas that I might have for the song. But this, which started as a vague idea, I feel like it's blossomed pretty well and is going to become a great addition to our song selections. As for the drums, I'm not using any sampler. This is actually my drum kit that's behind me there. It's a Gretsch Catalina Classic maple set, and all of my cymbals are Centent cymbals. I know a lot of people haven't heard about Centent cymbals, and they tend to ask me about them when they hear them. If you like playing live drums and are looking for some new cymbals, I definitely recommend giving Centent a try, and I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to learn more. The drums on this were played by my friend Edward Melton, and this was actually a one take. I think he did a fantastic job. If I zoom in a bit, you can see that I've done a little bit of editing on here just to tighten things up a bit, but for being a one take, I think he did a fantastic job on this, and I love the way that it sounds and feels. We do have a bass player, but I played the bass on this myself just to help document the idea. I would like to replace my playing with the actual bass player's playing because, well, admittedly, he's a much better bass player than I am. For my guitars, I used my Ibanez Itchy 10, and I ran them through Audio Assault's Amp Locker, which is the primary focus of this video. Let's listen back to the intro with the guitar soloed and then take a look at the plugin. If we take a look at Guitar 1, which is the left channel, we'll open up the plugin Amp Blocker, and you can see that we're using the Prestige 1959, which, as I said, appears to be modeled after a Marshall Plexi style amp. I'm running the gain around 4, got my bass turned down a bit low because I wanted to make sure that I had enough headroom for the actual bass to shine through. In a lot of cases, I feel like people leave way too much low end in their guitars, and I know that we can shave off a good bit in post, either with a channel strip or an EQ plugin, but I tend to treat my amp sim plugins as if they were a live amp head and just dial it in best I can. Needless to say, I still have a little bit going on after the amp. I'm running PSP Infinistrip in mono mode, and I'm doing a bit of a low end roll off around 73 Hz, and I'm rolling off the high end at about 8K, and my cell phone is. You can see that I've got an EQ in the stack as well, but I'm not actually doing anything. So outside of my high pass and low pass filters, I'm only using Infinistrip for a little bit of compression and for this Neve style channel sound. Going back to Amp Blocker, we take a look at the cab section. I'm running the Reamp M model cabinet simulator. Now, this is one that does not come with Amp Blocker. This was part of the Reamp 2 bundle. I had previously purchased Reamp and I was able to get it for free when they upgraded it to the Amp Blocker version. And I'm running a 421 style mic on this. You can see that I'm also blending this with this AC900 style cab simulator, which I'm not sure what model that actually is, and an 87 style microphone. So if I solo this channel, it sounds something like this. I think I may also have an overdrive pedal. Let's take a look at the pedal section. And I am using this Mahoney pedal, which I believe is modeled after Mudhoney, if I recall the name. If I turn this off, it sounds something like this. So you can hear that I'm not doing a whole lot with this overdrive pedal. I'm mostly just tone shaping and adding just a little bit of gain to give it a bit more breakup. If we take a look in the outboard effects section, I'm not adding anything more to this channel. So let's take a listen to this before and after PSP Infinistrip and see how much this is actually doing, or not doing. I'll start with it off. I'm not sure if you can hear that, but it's only adding a very subtle amount of maybe some saturation and a very small amount of compression. I'm mostly using this just to make sure that my pick attacks are leveled out to some extent. So I'll close out of this and let's take a look at the second channel. We'll open up the Amp Blocker plugin. And I'm using that same amp model, the Prestige 1959, but I'm using more gain and I've got more bass, just a little bit of a different EQ stack on this. If I take a look at the cab section, I'm running two completely different cabs. I've got the Glasstone 412 and the Woods C5. In this case, I'm using an SM57 style mic and a 414. I'm not sure what that model is, but I'm sure some of you microphone and gear nerds would know. And I've got this a bit more balanced between the two, whereas in the Channel 1 guitar, I was leaning a whole lot more to the secondary cab sim. You can see that we've also got some additional controls up here in the cab section to do a high-pass filter or low-pass. You can change the volume and panning if you wanted to run this in stereo and split your cabinets left and right. And you can also change the distance of the microphone from the cab and increase more of the room sound if you like. If I take a look at my pedal section, I'm also running that same Mahoney, and it looks like about the same type of settings, maybe a bit higher on the tone. And I've got nothing in the outboard effects section. Let's take a listen to the second guitar and see how that sounds. Definitely has a bit more grit and saturation versus Guitar 1. I like the breakup and I definitely love how it contrasts with the first guitar. I'm also running Infinistrip on this. I tend to run Infinistrip on just about everything that I do these days. I like Infinistrip because it's a zero latency plugin, and if I use this with live streams, I don't have to worry so much about syncing up my audio and video, and I don't have to worry about it adding any latency to the other plugins. Just like with my first guitar channel, it seems like I'm not doing any heavy lifting with the EQ stack here. I'm doing a small amount of compression, and I'm using that same Neve style console emulator to just give it a little bit of flavor. And I'm also doing a bit of high pass and low pass filtering. So let's try this with and without Infinistrip and see if we can hear a difference. I'll start with it off. That low pass filter definitely seems to be rolling off some of that high end harshness. But for the most part, it seems I'm just using this for a little bit of analog saturation and a mild amount of compression. Now, what I find to be the more interesting guitar out of this whole song is channel 3, which is what I'm using for the verse section. Let's take a look at the verse. And I'll solo guitar 3. I'm using that same amp blocker plugin, but you can see a little bit of a difference here that I'm using Recomp in front of it. I'm using Recomp to help balance out my tapping. And it's not fast Polyphia style tapping, but I do like to use this compressor to help make sure that my notes ring out a bit longer. I'll leave this over to the side if you'd like to monitor that to see how much work it's actually doing. So I'm using the same Prestige 1959 amp that I've used on the other two channels. I'm using the same Mahoney drive pedal. For my cabs, I'm running the AC900 on both sides, but it looks like I'm only using one side here. And the most interesting part of this, I feel, is in the rack effects section. Here I'm using a chorus and a reverb, and I've tried to emulate the sound that I get out of my Electro Harmonix Oceans 11 reverb pedal, particularly on the shimmer mode. Let's take a listen to this section with guitar 3 soloed. Definitely not my cleanest playing, but I really like the way that this chorus and reverb sound together. It comes very close to emulating that reverb pedal that I've got on my real guitar rig. Now in this case, I'm not running Infinistrip after this, but I do have Infinistrip on the guitar's bus, and that's a stereo version of the plugin. Close these other plugins so we can focus. And here I'm running an SSL style channel strip, or console emulation, or whatever the correct term is for this. Running a little bit of drive and a little bit of gain. And I've got my high pass filter set at about 108 Hz, and that's of course going over all three guitar tracks to help filter out some of that low end and allow the bass to shine through a bit more. I'm filtering the high end around 8K, and I'm running a VCA compressor to help balance out the guitars. I find that this compressor, when I've got it across all three channels, tends to help bring my tapping part forward, and it really just, if you'll forgive the expression, glues the guitar bus together as a whole. I am doing a little bit of EQ work here, rolling off a couple of dB around 120 Hz. Once again, just doing more filtering to let that bass shine through. You have to be really careful when you're doing the low-end roll-off to not remove so much to where the guitars sound thin and weak. So if I unsolo channel 3, where I've just got my guitars soloed, let's take a listen to this with and without Infinistrip. Start back here at the intro, and I'll let it bleed over into the verse section as well so we can compare. To me, it sounds like once I engage the Infinistrip plugin, I can hear a lot of the low-end woofiness, if that's the right word, come out of the guitars. Even with the filtering that I've already done on the guitar tracks, adding this extra little bit of low-end roll-off really helps to take away some of that low-end energy and leave room for the bass. Let's see how it affects the verse with the cleaner channel. I feel that it works in about the same way on that cleaner guitar there with the tapping. It seems it removes a good bit of the low end, but not so much to where it sounds thin and lifeless, and it also accentuates the upper end. You may have seen me adjusting just a small amount as I was listening through there, but it does add back a bit of brightness, and you can see that I've pulled out a little bit of mud around the 370 hertz. And it just dawned on me, I've always been frustrated watching people do mix reviews or breakdowns like this, and they always say a little bit of this, a little bit of that on literally everything that they touch, and I've just done it. So I guess I'm just adding or removing little bits of this and that here and there. That is the secret sauce to a good mix. That's about all that I'm doing on the guitars as a whole. It looks like I've got Event Horizon on here, and I'm not really doing anything with it other than just putting it there in case I get some signal that's peaking over 0. I've got this set with a ceiling of minus 0.1, and I don't think I ever even come anywhere close to it. Let's check again. Now, I'm coming nowhere near it, so this is more of a safety precaution than anything. It may come into play a bit later, but I feel like I've got my levels up high enough to where I really don't even need this. Since we're talking about audio assault, I may as well show you the bass channel as well. For the bass, I'm using Klank, which is another audio assault plugin, and this is more of a pedal board type of effect that's similar to the Dark Glass Alpha Omega, I think it may be called. I'm not sure what the exact name is, but let's take a listen to this bass and see what it sounds like. I'm doing a similar thing to what I did on the guitars with the tapping, and I'm using Recomp in front of the Klank pedal just to help even out my bass going into the audio interface. I'm not a properly trained bass player and not well practiced either, so my picking is often inconsistent. I do play with my fingers, and as I said, I just don't do it very consistently, so I use this to try to level out the pick attack, or finger attack I should say, as it feeds into the plugin. And it sounds a little something like this. And I think that sounds pretty good. I've got a little bit of drive going on here, and I'm filtering my low and high a bit just to get the sound that I want. I wanted to try to accentuate the pick attack. I keep saying pick attack, but this was played with my fingers. Accentuate the attack of each bass note. So I'm running through this stomp box with some drive, and tab section, I'm just using the default Klank 4x10. Looks like I've done little to nothing with the high pass and low pass filters. I've just left everything here at its default setting because it sounded good to me. In the effects section, I don't even have anything turned on here, so I'm literally just using this for the overdrive / distortion, whatever you'd like to call it, and the cab simulation. If I turn all of that off, let's see what the bass sounds like. So this is the dry bass signal, and I'll turn it back on while playing so you can hear the difference. As you can hear, I'm using this pedal to give the bass a bit of growl, a bit of grit, whatever you'd like to call it, and to make it sound more like it's running through a speaker cab with this cab simulator. It's doing the job quite well. So if I try those guitars and bass together, it sounds a little something like this. You may notice this yellow line that's going down on Guitar 3 as well as bass, and that is the new feature in Reaper 7 that allows you to see your compression in the mixer, as long as the compressor supports that feature. Recomp, being a stock plugin in Reaper, most definitely does feed into that, and it's nice to see how much I'm compressing at a glance without having to open the plugin. Moving on to my drums, I'm not doing a whole lot here. I've just got PSP Infinistrip across all of my tracks. But I've got Infinistrip mono plugins on each of the individuals and a stereo variant on buses. So I've got PSP Infinistrip stereo on my drums bus, on my cymbals bus, on my overheads bus, and on my rooms bus. And the drums isolated sounds something like this. And if I bypass all the plugins, a bit quiet. So outside of Infinistrip, on the drums bus, I've also got a tape emulator from IK Multimedia and Event Horizon. Once again, I'm not really doing much with this, but I want to make sure that I'm clipping the drums if it goes over 0. I've got the ceiling set to minus 0.1, and if I play that back, I don't think I'm quite into clipping level yet. So before hitting Event Horizon, it looks like I'm peaking around maybe minus 4.8. Got a little bit higher there with the toms hitting around minus 2, but I'm not into clipping territory. Once again, that's just a bit of a safety precaution to help keep me from clipping. Up next, we've got vocals. Just to give you a quick overview there, I'm not doing much there. I've just got Redcution because my singing is far from perfect, and PSP Infinistrip where I'm doing a couple of different layers of compression, rolling off a bit of low end, and adding a bit of analog flavor. My audio interface is an Evo 16 from Audient, and I've got a couple of Evo SP8, so I've got 24 ins and outs, but that is all solid-state circuitry, so I use these plugins to add a little bit of analog flavor and saturation where I can. It can take some time to learn how to hear subtle amounts of saturation, but I definitely love the flavor, and I know I keep using that word, but the flavor that PSP Infinistrip imparts to my sound. Outside of that, I'm running a TR5 space delay. A TR5 is T-Tracks from IK Multimedia, and I'm blending that just to give my vocals a bit of reverb and delay, and a little bit of a shimmer that bounces between the left and right speakers. So if I take a listen to that vocal isolated, it sounds a bit like this with the effects.
Breathe in, breathe deep, let it fill your lungs, permeate from the inside. Breathe out, exhale, releasing and letting go of what's pulling you under. Hold on, hold out, stretch out your withered hands as the oceans collapse around you. The crashing of waves subsides as your vision fades. You see everything.
And that's about it. Outside of that, I've got a few effects on my master channel. I've got a tape machine from IK Multimedia, also running a LA2A emulator from IK Multimedia as well. And then I've got Event Horizon Clipper and Limit. And last but not least, the loudness meter that's a stock plugin in Reaper. Looks like I'm averaging about minus 9.5 loose integrated, and that seems plenty loud enough for me. I know it may not be louder than some of the commercial things out there, but to my ear, this is sounding pretty good, especially for a work in progress that was initially just to help me finish writing the song. Now, I know that this is very much outside of the normal scope of the way that I do videos here, but I hope that you've enjoyed this mixed breakdown. Now, if you've got any questions about any of the plugins that I'm using or techniques, or if you'd like to know a little bit more about how I mix things, just drop a comment below and I'll do my best to answer. I hope this has been helpful. If you like the content you're seeing, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and you can support the channel further by clicking the Buy Me a Coffee, I like coffee, Super Thanks, or Patreon links below. Visit us on Discord and engage with other Reaper users. We'll see you next time. I can't believe I held it that long. I gotta go.